Shall we? Welcome back, everybody. I'm Scott Kosnoff, your MC, and you're here for the panel on innovation catastrophes. Oh, wait, no. It's innovation during catastrophes. Our moderator will be Aaron Pierce. He's the president of the Iowa Insurance Institute and general counsel of Continental Western Group. He coaches football for Theodore Roosevelt High School here in Des Moines, and he enjoys playing golf and cooking. Aaron, take it away.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here. Thank you, everybody, for taking time to join us for this 30-minute session. I think we have a great topic ahead. We're going to be talking about proactive preparedness and how to leverage innovation in disaster, or what I think some other people think of as property catastrophe situations. And to do that, we have an awesome panel. I'm going to ask each of my colleagues to introduce themselves to kind of get us started here, and then we'll get into the meat of things.
Well, thanks, Aaron. Ramon Lopez, and I lead the Innovation Claims Organization. I've been at USA for 14 years. I've actually led Catastrophe Response for USAA's enterprise, and happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Haskins, and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Insurance Crime Bureau. I have all state and federal government affairs under me. NICB is a nonprofit organization supported by over 1,100 property and casualty insurance companies. We've been around for about 105 years. We've been very involved with law enforcement and fraud and prosecutions of fraud over the years. But in the last couple of years, we kind of ventured into a new area, and this is catastrophe response. And we're going to be talking about our Geospatial Intelligence Center in our response over the past year.
Fantastic. To start off with, I think it might be helpful for us to set the table a little bit on this topic, because I think everybody can conceptually understand what we're talking about, but sometimes starting off with some hard and fast examples might be a very beneficial thing. Would you both maybe care to talk a little bit about what each of your organizations is doing with this technology, maybe even define what this technology is?
Yeah. Can I start?
Sure, I'll go ahead. A couple of years ago, we started researching and trying to really find where we were going to sit in this space of catastrophe response. NICB historically sits in between the insurance industry and law enforcement and first responders. So we wanted to leverage our ability to bring those resources together. And so what we found was several companies that had the technology for high-resolution aerial imagery and ground imagery that we are able to then utilize, but we're not only able to utilize that for our member companies, we're able to utilize that technology to provide to first responders. We provide that information to FEMA. We also can provide that to the insurance regulators as well. We were pressed into service when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. We weren't quite ready to go, but it came and we took off with this technology. Now, to start with that technology, you have to have a base. You have to have aerial and ground imagery for a base, and we call that blue sky. And that has already been done. And actually, we're in the process right now of doing that again, mapping the entire United States with aerial high-resolution imagery. And again, it's not just top-down. This is 45-degree angle, so we're able to get a full picture of the structures and the buildings. So we do that once a year. Then we do also ground imagery of the 50 largest metropolitan areas in the United States. So when a disaster does hit, like Harvey hit Houston, we were then able to allocate resources, get planes in the air, and get imagery again, and then able to turn that imagery around within hours. That imagery used to take weeks to turn around. We're now able to get that imagery within hours into the hands of the people, again, not only the insurance companies, but first responders that are on the ground.
Yeah, and thanks so much for kind of setting the stage with what it is. So let's take the hard example of Harvey. And we were deployed out in Corpus and the surrounding areas, and members kept coming to our catastrophe response vehicles, like I'm sure many of you all have seen or have your own, and they said, look, we're happy you're here, like thanks for your support, but like we can't get back to our home right now. The authorities are like not letting us get back in. We don't know if we should go states away to like uncle or a cousin's house. We don't know what to do next. Like, so what can you do, USAA? And I think that's an example of, like someone said earlier, is that members, in our case, customers in most people's cases, expectations are changing. Like there's more that's being asked for than just a payout under an insurance claim. And so for this event, we said, look, let us see what we can do about it. We have access to imagery, and we're going to challenge ourselves to put this imagery up within a day. And so we were able to get all these thousands of images that we had of the areas that were hit, put it into a platform that people could access on the USAA.com website, and also we put it on Facebook and Twitter so that people could share it. It wasn't exclusively for the USAA membership. What that resulted in was a slider bar of like a picture, and you type in your address, and it would be before the event happened, and you can slide it back and say, like, is your home still there? And there are people who learned that their home was gone, like on this tool. And so that was like retweeted and shared. I think it was like almost 40,000 unique hits in the area for people who access this information. And again, I think it goes back to like, what else can we provide through the use of technology so that our policyholders, in my case, our members, get more value out of the relationship with a company like USAA.
Ramon makes a good point, because if you go onto our website now, geospatialintel.org, or I'm sorry, geointel.org, you're able to type in any address of anywhere in the United States, and you're able to see that imagery. And he's correct in saying, in Houston, we were able to lay claims data over the top of this imagery. We were able to identify areas in the Houston and surrounding areas that claims weren't coming in. And FEMA and first responders asked us, why aren't claims coming in from these particular areas? And we told them, there's people are stranded there. They have no cell service. They have no way to file a claim. So they were able to deploy their resources to rescue or to get to these individuals during these floods. So that was one of the unintended consequences that we learned very quickly, because we have the claims data and we have the imagery, and we were able to marry those two and identify where resources needed to be.
So to ask a follow-up on this, though, as you talk about the various things your organizations have done, and certainly in situations of great dire need, can you talk a little bit about the specific type of assets that your organizations leverage to obtain that data? Are you using drones? Are you using data aggregators, vendors? How does that work?
So first of all, with NICB, we don't own any of this equipment. We don't own the planes. We don't own the software. We partnered up with Vexcel and Esri. Vexcel used to be Bing Mapping. That was spun off of Microsoft, and so now it's a private company. They own all the technology. They own the aerial imagery. They own the planes. They own all of that. We are able to leverage our relationships with them, and it is a cost, but it's only a cost that covers the basics. So we're able to take all of our resources, all of our 1,100 member companies, and we're able to purchase this service from them. We're also leveraging our relationship with Esri, that's the software company, that we're able to provide data analytic tools for claims adjusters that are able to look at that imagery and adjust that claim from their desk. And Ramon can talk more to this, but it turns those claims over much, much quicker, and we're able to get money in the hands of the catastrophe victims quickly.
Yeah, we have USAA, we have a fairly mature drone capability. Drones are at this time aren't scalable for an event like this, right? Like, we're talking home by home, but an event that's covering a large mileage area, that was not the case for the situation. We also partner with companies. We look at this like, look, our members want immediate information, and if that information is available through this company on this event because they happen to have headquarters next to the area, then by all means, we're going to go with that company. But for us, it's a race to the moon during an event like that, and it's who can have it the fastest. We should be able to, and companies like you all should be able to develop systems that you can intake this information and take action on it. I think that's the secret sauce. It's not as easy as taking a photo and all of a sudden I'm taking this photo and trying to figure out where my policyholders are at. There are lots of mechanisms that work underneath that so that you can make really fast decisions on it.
When you look at the, kind of call it the collective pool of assets or resources out there that a company of any size could look at and try to leverage, is there anything that you've seen work especially well, and anything from an asset standpoint that you've seen perhaps not be as effective as some may have hoped?
I'll start this one. I think what's really helpful is that everyone remains really responsible with the local authorities. I think that Alan and your team, like, you have certain access as a result of being in ICB, but I think every hobbyist and every enthusiast and every carrier, and you name every other, like they want to get imagery of the area for all types of reasons. And I think that as long as we're being responsible and are really ensuring that the local authorities, we're going by their guidance, that's number one. Like you have to do that. And those that don't, oftentimes it actually ruins it for everyone else who's trying to get to do this well. I also feel like there's a couple of things that this is going to lend itself to, and I really want to highlight this is, today we have a lot of folks who climb roofs. Like we know climbing roofs is not the most safest thing to do right now. And so this technology will be able to, we feel like, make this more safer from an adjuster's perspective. But then let's take it a step further. So now that we have like digital assets and we have data, we have lat longs, we have all types of insights around your home and the shape that it's in, how are we developing models to move that forward and say, I'm going to drive automated decisioning based on the digital capabilities that this imagery gave us. So I think that we're starting kind of like a crawl, walk, run capabilities. We had a lot of manual processes to do this during Harvey. We had a little less manual processes to do during the wildfire, and we're actually developing really robust capabilities to truly drive automation and be able to come with like instant decisioning.
I think for us, it's the combination of the high-resolution aerial imagery and the ground vehicles. So when a disaster occurs and you have first responders going into those areas, our vehicles are right behind those trucks, right behind those fire trucks. We have access to those before anybody else. So it's the aerial imagery along with the ground imagery that we can access. But not only is the aerial imagery, it's gotten to a point where we can see down to 3 centimeters from that aerial imagery. And again, that technology has come to fruition within the last couple of years. This is brand new. So when we marry those two, we're able to look at the ground imagery and the aerial imagery, and we're really able to get a great picture of that disaster area. Certainly drones, and we've got nothing against the drones, and certainly nothing against satellite imagery as well. We know we have the best clear digital imagery, high resolution imagery out there on the market right now.
And I think Aaron, we shouldn't walk past, if you have this level of insight and detail immediately following an event, therein lies new skills that the people who talk to policyholders have to really start being skilled up on, right? So we've done a lot of you've taken a lot of information, you're documenting a lot of manual information, but if I tell you, Aaron, and you're the adjuster, that your members or policyholders' home is no longer there, and you're going to have the first conversation with that individual or family, we also feel like this is going to create a new skilling that all of us have to really start focusing on, because this new technology is not just new technology, it's also about the people who help deliver the experience. So that's something that we're also focused on right now.
That's a very good point. Anytime you introduce a new tool like this, I think sometimes it's very easy as a business to get real excited in a hurry because you've got something, whether it's a competitive edge or something new that your employees are fired up about. You can forget that our business is predominantly focused on managing risks in people and businesses' lives. I do want to switch gears, though, because I think one of the things we need to talk about to do this topic justice, we've been talking a lot about the reactive abilities that this technology provides after we've had a horrible catastrophic event, a fire, a storm, a tornado. If we could shift gears and talk a little bit about how this can be used before the event happens. Obviously, an insurance organization, whatever the line of business may be, has a lot of different parts to it. You've got underwriting, you've got actuary, you've got IT, you've got finance and accounting. Can you talk a little bit about where this technology can be integrated in at different points in those areas of the business to either help advance the cause of the business, keeping prices down, or maybe making people more effective at their jobs, so that when disaster does hopefully not strike too often, we're ready to go?
So yeah, historically, NICB, our support comes from the insurance industry from the claims side. On our board are the chief claims operating officers. But since we've deployed this technology and started using this, all of a sudden we started to get interest from the underwriting side. Because again, we're imaging as we speak, all the United States once a year, and then the 50 largest metropolitan areas. So we have the most up-to-date imagery, what we again refer to as blue sky, that are available to the insurance industry. So they're able to start looking at that from an underwriting standpoint. And then we've also started getting interest now from reinsurers as well, that they would use this technology.
Yeah, I think that's very well stated. For us, it's just that look at loss patterns, look at how the cycle times are going to change. I mean, we're still new to this. I don't want to say that we have all the answers. I just know that we put out metrics and measurements to say, how is this changing kind of loss behavior very soon after an event?
And have you found when you've deployed these tools in other areas of the business, do you find that those individuals are ready, excited, and willing to accept it and, be creative, kick the tires on it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, people want to do the best job they can, the highest skill set that they've been trained to do, and leveraging like augmentation with these tools, I think people are highly engaged and want to use it.
So taking that, let's narrow in on one specific area of the business, because I think it is easy to fixate on property losses when talking about this type of technology, and that makes a ton of sense, no doubt. But there's obviously a lot of different carriers out there, a lot of different people represented and organizations represented here today. Let's talk a little bit about where this technology might be useful in the life and health space. Do you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll say a couple things. So one, most of you all know, maybe some of you guys are members as well, like we are not the USA, the insurance company. We're USA, the full financial services organization with a bank and a life company and a financial advice center. And so what we're looking at doing is that when we have tools and technology like this, with all this data, we're able to offer a full financial services suite to someone, like let's say like in California, the folks who had really bad fire losses. I mean, now how do we get a financial advisor to talk to the member who's getting a check that's for the whole loss of their home, their total loss home? We're offering additional services that maybe we wouldn't have in the past because the cycle time wasn't as quick. I mean, we're settling some claims like within days versus what I think in the past were more like weeks. And look, we do have an area of our business where we're really trying to innovate health solutions as well. And so where this goes regarding wearable technology and data and sensors associated with that and being able to get like immediate information around the health of your home and maybe the health of you, I think is to be determined. But I'll tell you what, we're not thinking about it.
I think from our standpoint, we were able to see results of first responders, medical responders, that they were able to allocate resources where they were needed the most. When you look at that imagery, you could see Harvey especially, Irma in Florida, Maria in Puerto Rico. You were able to see where the need, the most need was that resources were heading. One of the things that occurred in Harvey that we really didn't expect is we started seeing in the imagery is so clear that we're able to start seeing oil spills. Not only were we able to identify where there were oil spills in the floodwaters, we were able to identify the specific pipe that the oil spill was coming out of, and that prevented. So they were able to go fix that quickly before that spread and became more of a health hazard, I think, to the general public than what was occurring. So it's those types of things that we weren't kind of expecting that we were going to be able to do, but I think those things will come more and more as we start to do this. One of the things with the wildfires is the imagery, the smoke and the ash was clouding the imagery. Well, they were able to use certain techniques with the red and green and the imagery to move away, to clear out that smoke, that they were able to identify and see those images of the fire losses much quicker.
It seems to me that when one sits back and thinks about this topic, and if you allow your mind to wander a little bit and get creative, you suddenly realize disaster preparedness is just an all-encompassing concept at this point, really. I mean, we are not just talking about protecting structures. You make a great point, especially on having medical resources appropriately staffed. We talk about controlling the cost of healthcare. One of the most important things you can do is have strong preventative measures and understand what's needed, where it's needed, and how much of it's going to be needed. So it certainly seems like there's a lot of potential there. The next question I'd like to ask you both is really oriented towards the integration of the technology into the business. What would you recommend as a best practice if a company is sitting back and saying, I want to get more into this? How would you recommend they build their team? Who would you recommend they talk to and work with? What does the first 100 days of that experiment look like?
Yeah, I'll start this one. So USA, we have a design office that is all kind of human-centered design focused. And so we deploy our designers out to like experiences. And so getting true feedback and showing and demonstrating empathy with your customer, I think is like you have to understand what the ask is. Like we did that. Like our folks, our members said, we want to know the health of our home. But I think people walk past that step and say, no, I have the answers. And you may have some of them, but maybe you don't have the best answer. So I think for one, it's like really understanding the problem and doing that through experiences is first and foremost to truly understand the root cause. Second piece is like you need the business there. Like we need like business leaders and folks who are in the thick of things, understanding like how does this integrate into my job? What you can't do is you can't develop something and then give it to the business and then all of a sudden say, look what I gave you, and there's no integration point. So I think having key business leaders as well as the folks who do the work associated to the project team is very important. The last two I'd say is like you need someone who is really good at project managing, because oftentimes the scope of something like this, the scope creep is pretty amazing, right? You're right. If you have time set aside, you start getting really creative and say, man, I bet I can do this now. And that's a whole nother layer of work that you didn't plan for. And the last thing I'll say is a thought leader in IT. So a technical architect as well on that team would be very helpful. Look, we use the resources across USA to do this in hours and not days, but we really aligned on our mission, which is we're going to protect the financial security of our members, and we can move pretty quickly when we do that.
I think for us in this geospatial intelligence area is our relationships that we built with these outside tech companies. Again, we've got competitors in this space, but again, we don't own this tech. We didn't have to put money out for this. We're able to develop those relationships, and we're only covering their costs. So basically, they're coming to us, outside companies, and we're building this relationship, and we're able to provide this service not only to our member companies, but also to the regulators, first responders, and then eventually to the consumers. One other thing I'll mention is NICB's history of over 105 years. We've got about 400 employees nationwide where we have relationships with every state law enforcement, state, federal, local law enforcement officials. And those relationships are so important. Those relationships were built over years and years and years. So when something like this happens, we're one of the first people they call, or we're standing there hand in hand with them. And again, we're supported by 1,100 property and casualty insurance companies. We are the insurance industry when it comes to these disasters. So it's that partnership between the industry and NICB and our partners in law enforcement and first responders that we really rely on.
So I've got one last question, and then I think we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. Certainly when we start talking about drone flights, gathering data, there are two things that always come up: concerns with how to have healthy discussions with regulators and concerns about potential privacy concerns with the very constituents you're trying to serve. Could you give us very quickly a couple of tips on how you've taken those issues on successfully and what you recommend considering if somebody's looking to get more into using this technology in their operation?
I think for us, it's being a tip of the spear. So we didn't wait for directions on how to do this all. So we followed guidelines that we were given to us, and if you knew what those guidelines were early on, they're very laborious, right? We were knocking on doors and asking members, like, would you mind if we do this? And by and large, I won't say 100%, but almost every member said, no, like, you're USAA, we trust you, absolutely go ahead. And if you've ever been at a drone inspection, you kind of like watch it go up in the air and then it's done. Like, you're like, okay, well, I got it. It's not that exciting anymore. But I think ensuring that, one, you're at the tip of the spear, so you actually, as guidelines are coming down, progress is happening, like you're there testing and ideating on these things, no matter how laborious, because now you're like developing the integration points that should be integrated in the organization.
Yeah, for us, it was providing our consumer tool where you could go on our website, type in an address, and you could see that aerial imagery of that house. And as we were talking about earlier, in some instances, these victims of this disaster, the first time that they were seeing what happened to their home was getting on that website and looking at that. And I think that was very, very powerful that we provide that to the consumers as well. The other thing is still it goes back to the first responders in providing them the tools that they can need to get to the areas where the most need is. I think that was very important.
Great. Well, right now, I think we'd like to go ahead and open up the floor. We've got about 5-6 minutes left for questions. We'd welcome anything on your minds. We've got one. All right.
I'm curious, we discussed the use of drones and imaging post-disaster, but pre-disaster, is the quality of the digital image sufficient that you can tell almost the age of the roof and certainly the roof quality, because that's a key factor in underwriting?
I certainly can't speak for drones because we don't use that technology. And I think with our imagery, I know the technology has moved so quickly with the cameras that we're able to get down to 3 centimeters that they're able to look. So yes, in the area of our blue sky imagery, I think you are able to look at the age of that roof. You're able to look very, very carefully. And again, our imagery is not only top down, it is coming at a 45-degree angle where then you're able to look at that whole 360 view of that property. Not only do we have that, then it's the analytical tools that are also being utilized to measure the sides of the building, measure the windows, measure the roofs. They're able to look at that building and actually adjust that claim very quickly from a desk and from those data analytic tools.
I can actually also speak to that. I've worked with some of our claims folks on that issue, and from what I've seen, even with the use of aircraft that cost under $1,500, you can get photography that's of a high enough quality that you can make basic determinations on the quality of a roof. Yes, we've got one up here.
Yeah, I'll just speak loud.
Okay.
There you go.
After the wildfires, Harvey, Irma, any lessons learned? We've heard in the other presentation about problems to be solved. So if you look back on the experience last year, is there a big problem to be solved through technology for adjudicating and preparing for CAT claims?
Yes, we have quite a few lessons learned on our Kanban board today. Here's a couple things. One, we felt like this was so important that we put one single leader at USAA who's going to own the catastrophe experience across any line of business. So, I mean, so like you talk about square one, it's do you have an organization that's set up for success to respond to something like this? So we did that. Two is the value chain of an insurance claim and the supply chain associated with it is severely disrupted. And so if we can get these data points, and now we can connect to the building and materials companies in the local area to advance their thinking around how much labor, how much supplies is needed, like that's something we're thinking about. Like it's not just, it doesn't just end after you adjudicate the claim, because now what? The repair begins, and oftentimes that is another challenging process. So how can we educate other parts of the supply chain with data and information to make that a little less seamless? That's the one for us. Thanks.
So I'll add a little bit to that. One of the things that we learned from our imagery, especially from Irma in Florida and the Keys, is we were able to see very clearly where building standards were old and new. And they were properties, neighborhoods that were completely wiped out, and then right next to it were newer homes built at a higher hurricane strength standard. The buildings and structures were standing still. And if you look at that imagery, you can clearly tell when buildings were built, and you can see the difference in that. So that was one of the glaring things I think that we saw out of that imagery.
We've got just a few minutes left. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Building off of what Ramon just said, are you anticipating in the near future having claim-ready files with all your measurements and materials already built in, so when it hits the adjuster's desk, it's ready and possibly even to automate through?
Yeah, I think Brady's been in my office a few times. Yes, that absolutely is the ultimate end goal. I mean, we want to basically create every moment of uncertainty that's involved in this type of event. We want to eliminate all those moments of uncertainty. And there's moments of uncertainty before the event happens, and there's a set of moments of uncertainty that you have to solve for there during the event and then post-event. It's how we're breaking it up. But to your point, that's absolutely a goal of ours. Thank you for that.
Very good. I think that we are at time. Please join me in thanking our panelists.
Thanks. Thank you.
And thank you.